When we look at today's world, we've applied something called gender to it. Oh, a male and a female as being separate from each other. That's trying to take an energy and split it and saying, I'm going to look at this side only and I'm not going to look at this side. So this is the energy of the male side. This is the energy of the female side. Look, you have polarity. The ripple goes up in the positive and then drops down to what we refer to as negative, but that was just a name we put on it. It's the opposite, and it comes back up again. So a wave by itself is actually both genders, positive and negative. That is the wave. And this wave is replicated throughout the entire structure of the universe. That is all built on the relationships of the positive and negative. In a cell, they have both energies. Male characteristics are associated with structure and movement. Female characteristics are associated with vegetation and reproduction. In other words, growth, and this is support. Both support and growth are in every present cell. Both in your body right now, you have both those characteristics, okay? You have the support part, which is your skeleton, in fact. That's a big deal, the muscles and the skeleton. But you have the vegetative part. Well, those are the organs of the gut that are taking care of the metabolism, cleaning up the system. Over the evolution, the cell started to split because of differentiation of function. And one cell says, okay, I'll handle the support, but I can only work with it if you handle the vegetative. So it took both the male and female, but said you have to work them together. And the significance about this is even in the cell, both of them are there, but it's even in the human. In the human, we have both a female and male characteristic to it. And the simplest one is just look at the brain. There's a line right down the middle of the brain. That line separates what are called the hemispheres, left and right. Well, they're totally two different functions. The left hemisphere is associated with intellectual thinking and stuff like that. The right hemisphere is associated with emotion. Well, interestingly enough, in the way we separated the population, we look at males as being the intellectual talking part and all that stuff, and females are the sensory ones. They're the ones that have the sensory experiences that we relate to as emotion. Yeah, but a human has both of them. You have this intellectual part on this side, the emotional part on this side, the male part, the female part, but guess what? It doesn't work with only one hemisphere. You need to put the two back together again. As I said, in the cell, we have the structural features like microtubules that give us the structure, but we also have the membranes which make the function. And a cell has both of them to interact with each other. A human has both. We always associate females with estrogen and males with testosterone. All humans make estrogen and testosterone regardless of what sex they are. So built into you, you have both hormonal systems working. That gives us the balance that we need as humans. If we were only one side or the other side, it would cause such a resistance between the two sides that they wouldn't establish each other. They'd kill each other in the end because they're opposite in the sense of what we perceive as polarities. The polarities are the wave, up, down, down. Two polarities. The wave cannot live with just going up. It must have the going down side as well. So from the wave of an atom to the intelligence of the human, it's all been divided into what we have perceived and labeled as male and female, but recognizing all organisms have both characteristics. There is no separation. It's an emphasis in one and a different emphasis in the other, but emphasis doesn't mean only male or only female. Emphasis says I have both, but I will emphasize one more than the other, but I need the other person to balance it. If I'm doing the male side, then the balance requires a female to come in because that brings back the harmony of the system again. And so gender plays an important role, but then also recognize this, just like polarity that we talked about before, it's all on the same wavelength. They're not separate from each other. Both are required to carry through. Which one are you going to emphasize more or the other? Well, in our world, that changes through populations and civilization. But guess what? You might say, I'm a female. And I say, and what about the testosterone? Oh, well, that's the male side. And same with the male, I'm the testosterone, but I also have the estrogen. There's no separation. It's always been a principle in later civilization like we're in now that males and females have different characteristics, that females are sensitive, emotional creatures. Males are insensitive people. Wow, did we get separated by sensitive and insensitive? I go, no. Males and females have the same characteristics. Well, if they're the same, then how come males are insensitive, as referred to by many females, and correctly so? They're not insensitive by birth and biology. They're insensitive by programming. So as a male, I can tell you very simply, when I grew up, males used to hit each other and they'd say, I see you flinched, or, see you felt that. When we were going through that process as males where somebody would hit the other one in the shoulder and say, see, you flinched and all that, the male who was receiving the hit, let's say in my particular case, could feel that hit very much. But we wanted to be male, and we couldn't show that sensitivity side because that was the programming. So you could hit me and I would sit there and go, I didn't feel that. And then you say, oh, you must be insensitive. I say, well, no, I actually felt it, but my program says I didn't feel it. And you go, why would I take away sensitivity from a male? And the answer is profoundly simple. Because to be in a military, to be in an army, to fight in a war, you can't be sensitive. I can't give you a gun if you're so sensitive that you won't shoot the enemy. So to make an army and a military, and it started way back in the days of Sparta. The Spartans knew this right off in their education and training, and we do it today still. We separate men as the fighter, and women are the creative element of it. In a sense, am I just a fighter? And the answer is no. But my program made me take that sensitivity out of my system. I wouldn't respond. And by not responding, then by definition, I do get the label insensitive. But guess what? All humans have the same hormones. All humans have the same brain structure, left and right hemispheres. They all work the same. What did we do as males? Shunt the emotional side, because you cannot be emotional and be a soldier. And therefore we were programmed to lose our sensitivity. Not that we're not sensitive, but to not express sensitivity. This has caused a great diversion and separation of males and females so much, and violence can come from this. If a person isn't sensitive, they can do violent things without even thinking about it. We have created an artificial understanding of behavior, that we're saying that behavior of men is different than behavior of females. And I would then tell you from a biological point of view, when we were born, both male and female, we came out with the same levels of intellect and emotion. But it was through our programming that emphasized one over the other. For example, we don't have to go too far back and recognize women didn't even get education. Men were being educated. Women, no. They were taking care of the house and doing the domestic stuff. That was an artificial separation. But it became real by repeating it and perpetuating a belief of difference. And the difference is not in who we are in origin. It's a difference of who we are in regard to programming, which is shaping 95% of the character of our lives based on the programs we got in that first 7 years. Boys have different programs encouraged by the culture as compared to girls, which have different programs than the men encouraged by the culture. And if people would come to understand that, we can bring harmony back in instead of focusing on the polarities that we perceive in today's world. So, gender, artificial polarity, but it does exist. There is a more masculine behavior and a more feminine behavior, but that doesn't mean a person's sex determines which of those behaviors are going on. It's all the result of the programming of this brain. Emphasize the left, more intellectual. Emphasize the right, more emotional. They were always a continuum of the same thing. There is a difference in gender, yes, but we have created an artificial separation of that through the programming that we acquire in the first 7 years of our life. So in this last of the principles that we're talking about in the Hermetic principles, they all come back to one understanding, that everything is unity, everything is vibration and harmony. And if we understood that and started to live the principles, then the nature of the garden, because the garden is the height of cooperation, that our garden is not a battleground. Why? Human programming has caused a separation which is not natural and doesn't exist. You want to understand how to live in harmony? Go back and recognize each of the principles in the Hermetic series, because when you put them all together, it is a guide for us to thrive into the future. And this is what we need to relearn. Relearn? Yes, those ancient people from 5,000 years ago have given us the principles. And it's interesting because there's an old saying from Mark Twain. He said, "The older I get, the smarter my father becomes." And the idea is the older we get in civilization, now we can look back and say how smart those people were at the very beginning. And we should honor that.